latch onto. Basically, instead of being Abrahamic versus pagan, where it was with the faun, this one is more so Western versus Eastern. Western Hemisphere versus Eastern Hemisphere. The Western Hemisphere is the Wendigo, the Eastern Hemisphere is the Rjdyosn, by the way. There are a lot of different names for it in the Eastern Hemisphere, and the only one that really I know of is Rjdyosn. Is more of a probably dying out knowledge on the eastern side. I'm going to try to bring that back for you in this thing here. So before I do that, though, it's kind of like the comparison we made about the faun. How that Abrahamic side saw it to be literally the embodiment of the devil, and it was only trying to tempt you into doing evil, versus the pagan side that saw it as a protector and healer and guardian of the forest, which, yes, did try to tempt you, but only to test what your true intent was. And if you passed the test, then you were allowed to cross through the forest without being harmed. If you failed the test, then you're not allowed in the forest, and they would, basically fight to the death if they had to prevent you from getting in. So, it's in long story short, at least. If you want to know more about it, you can watch the long part about the faun that I have up on here, comparing the two beliefs. But we're going to focus on just the Wendigo versus Rjdyosn in this one. Since Wendigo is what most people, I think, are remembering nowadays, it's different with the faun. Both were kind of equal in what people remember. But since not many people remember what the Rjdyosn is, I'm going to start out with the Wendigo. And I will say that just keep in mind, it is night and day difference as to what the creature stands for, what it really is meant to do, what it really does, okay? So, especially if you're trying to learn about this, not just for fun, but like, if you're actually trying to see what you're doing dream work and you're trying to see what a lot of those visions mean and trying to interpret what it might mean, or if you're like me and practice ancient paganism and actually believe that they can exist potentially in the physical realm as well as the spirit realm, it serves a vital purpose to explain the difference. So, but if you're just in it for the fun, welcome. You can, I know I was like that for, even as a child, I liked to just listen to folklore. It would feed my imagination. So whatever you want to watch this for, be my guest. Wendigo is something that looks different. It's not, and this is the same for Rjdyosn. It's not, let's actually say what's the same about it first. They always look different. You can't really pinpoint it because they're kind of like hybrids of creatures. But there'll be two things about it that is said to be the same. It typically has unnatural strength. It is, and it's also typically got sharp teeth. I don't know if that's for certain about the sharp teeth when you're talking about Wendigo, but anyway. So basically, Wendigos, it's the idea that they used to be human. In fact, a Wendigo, to the Western side, the belief is that the Western Hemisphere indigenous belief is that, it's somebody who's had a really dark past, meaning that they've been wronged in many, many ways, meaning that they've probably been severely abused. They might have even almost died several times from that abuse. And they have kind of just, their spirit has changed into this sort of dark warrior. And it is technically a warrior, but it's a type of protector that gets vengeance in a brutal way. It kind of feeds off of its own rage, and it has an immense hunger, like an endless hunger as well. And so it goes out, it hunts and kills anyone that not only has either tried to hurt it or threaten it, but also anyone that's threatened or hurt anything that it deems innocent. So it will protect others as well. But it goes out and it hunts these people down. And typically it is humans that it's hunting, typically just humans. It will feed off the blood and the flesh of the human. It will become addicted to it. And it's said eventually that addiction spirals out of control to the point where it's no longer hunting just the evil people anymore. It just hunts anything it sees. And its rage becomes endless and uncontrollable. Every time it feeds, it's said that it gets more and more to the shape of an animal. So it's a shapeshifter, but it only shifts, at least what we're talking about with the Wendigo belief, that it can only shift when it feeds. And what it shifts into is a compilation of its totems. So if your totem is, say, a moose, a raven, a wolf, and an otter, then you're going to shift into a compilation hybrid of those totems. And those totems are supposed to remind that your own reflection is supposed to remind you of who you really are instead of this mindless, hungry beast. It's said to be really bad luck because eventually, like I said, they believe that it becomes out of control. And it's seen as a sort of omen, even though it's technically a protector. Now that is what, in essence, the Western side believes. There's a bit of several different spins on the Western side, but that's the one that I know of. Now let's talk about the Rjdyosn. It's a much different view on what that is and what that stands for, and even how the creature gets its hybrid form in the beginning. So Rjdyosn is a dark protector, and by that I mean just dark energy. Dark versus light is not good or bad. It's sun, moon, day, night, that kind of thing. Summer, winter, it's that kind of thing. So a dark energy would be like storm energy, night energy, winter energy, that kind of thing. So it's a dark protector. Typically has carried a lot of past experiences that are not great, where it's constantly been either in a past life or a current life or both, been a victim of unnecessary violence and things like that. So that's the same, kind of. But in essence, it doesn't technically have to be like that. It can just be a dark protector. In fact, there are rare cases where it's said it can even be a light protector or a mixture of light and dark. So I actually should clarify that it's not always a dark protector, but a lot of times it is. Instead of, shifting when it feeds, and instead of always being human and shifting into its own totems, it's just born that way. As the Rjdyosn, it's just born that way. Rjdyosn is said to actually be capable of being born out of any womb. It can be a shapeshifter, but it doesn't have to be. It can even be born out of the womb of a human. Some Rjdyosns barely look different. All that you can see is that they've got unnaturally sharp teeth and they're unnaturally strong, and that's the only thing different about it. And the rest, it just kind of looks like a normal, say, deer or hare or something. But a hare doesn't have sharp teeth, and that's just like something's off about it. Really, you can't judge it just by that alone. You have to judge it also by what it does and how it acts. Rjdyosn is a protector, not a mindless beast, okay? So it does have control, but it hunts the evil things. It does feed and eat off of the evil things. Its main purpose is to protect the forest against the threats out there. And typically it will target the largest threat first. Unless prey is not readily available, and then it'll go for whatever it can get. But typically, if it had a choice, it's going to target the worst threat to the forest first. Typically, I hate to say it, but what is the biggest threat to most forests? Humans. Humans. So typically, that's going to make up most of its diet if it can get itself in a place to do that. Okay, if it has the means to do that. So, that's going to be its first choice usually, is it? But it's not just any human. Because it can look into the eyes of that human, or any creature for that matter, and just by looking at the eyes alone, just by sensing the energy, it just instinctively knows whether that person is good or bad. So kind of like a fawn, it can sense, without even testing them, it can sense whether the spirit, the vibrational energy of that person or being or creature is good or bad. And it will completely leave be the innocent. And it will only hunt the evil things, the things that are pure evil. So even if it's something that has accidentally done something, like maybe you accidentally trekked down a tree or something and didn't mean to, and they toppled over a tree or something. Or that's a bad example. Maybe you accidentally spilled a toxin into a stream. The Rjdyosn is smart enough to know whether it was on accident or whether it was on purpose. And typically, if it's on accident, it will pardon you. It'll be really fucking pissed, but it'll pardon you. So, the only time that Rjdyosn doesn't pardon the innocent, typically, is when it's kind of forgotten who it is. It's said to be really rare that happens, and also really bad luck. When a Rjdyosn forgets who he truly is, actually the reverse happens. Instead of what people were talking about in the Wendigo, when the Rjdyosn forgets, he loses his strength, he loses his weapons, so he loses his claws, his fangs, his teeth, and he turns more to human, back into something that he really is not. It doesn't have to be human, but he either turns into human or some other prey. He loses his weapons, he loses his strength, he loses his title as a protector, and he becomes this sort of defenseless prey animal. That's what happens when a Rjdyosn forgets who he is and starts killing off innocent things. So it's literally the reverse. Rjdyosn kills an innocent, really actually, it has to kill an innocent. It doesn't even, for a Wendigo, people say the Wendigo kill anything, not even, regardless whether it's evil or not, killing anything, any human. And it says that brings on a shift. But the Wendigo is shifting into animal when it forgets who he is. The Rjdyosn is shifting back into this, humanoid-like, a lot of times, or at least prey animal-like creature. I don't know any prey animal that is weaker than a human. A lemming is stronger than a human. I understand that it's a lot tinier, but if we were lemmings, we could jump 5 stories in the air, but we can't do that, can we? So lemmings are actually a lot stronger than people, despite their size. If you take away the human ability to craft weapons and cheat, you just stick a human out there with no, knives or guns or anything like that. Human wouldn't last long against a predator. So that's why I say a type of humanoid, but I guess it doesn't have to technically be a human. Just something that's really weak and decrepit. Put it that way. It's a curse, basically. It's until you learn from your mistakes, you're no longer a protector. You become defenseless. But once you learn and remember who you are again, then you can shift back into who you really are. So it's not to say that it's permanent unless you never learn that lesson. And really, that's the theme with paganism, really. I mean, that's a theme anyway, where we, even as regular old human beings, if we harm the innocent, we get threefold. We get immense suffering and pain. And usually that threefold doesn't end until we learn our lesson. If we learn our lesson. So really, it's not unique to the Rjdyosn. In paganism, we believe that happens to anyone. Weakness and suffering and immense pain is given to anyone who forgets right from wrong. So, pairing up again, just to sum up, the biggest difference is that the Rjdyosn is never seen as anything to be an omen. It's seen to always be a protector. It's not a Rjdyosn anymore. If it, like I said, chooses wrong and gets its title stripped of it, it's no longer a Rjdyosn. So, to be that hybridized creature, it has to be a pure intent. It has to be a protector. The Wendigo, to be that creature, it has to have sinned. It has to have done wrong. It has to have hurt the innocent. So that's, the opposite. I don't know how. Sometimes I can look at things and go, yeah, I get how this theory came about. And I really don't know how the theory of the Wendigo came about. I'm sorry, it almost seems like it was impregnated with fear and the inability to think for oneself and to ask why and to investigate without assumption. Like we often do in this era. But to pinpoint and say how or why one is the way, I don't know. I cannot say that. It can be quite tricky because a lot of hybridized creatures, again, fawn, great example of fawn is great, is not a Wendigo at all. There's a lot of different hybridized, countless things that you, but the one thing that you become to understand about Rjdyosn is that most of these other hybridized creatures you can identify. You know, half man, half goat, that's easy. Half man, half horse or whatever, that's easy. But it can be literally any species. I did the best I could with all the examples I had to give. Typically, Wendigo is, Rjdyosn, wow, I need something, I don't know what it is, but I need some. Rjdyosn is something that, its reflection is kind of a compilation of what it is inside its spirit. It doesn't necessarily have to be hereditary. It can, doesn't have to be. Also, one thing I forgot to mention is that Rjdyosn also typically has red eyes. Not always, but typically. The more further removed from the idea that it's not random, these compilations of the creatures it is, you know, talk about this a lot in shapeshifting actually. You cannot be what you are not. And so, you know, if you've got 3 or more different species as a part of your spirit, that usually means that you had a lot of past lives as those species. And even just a regular old shapeshifter can be this kind of hybridized looking thing. Really the only way to truly define it is it hunting the evil things? Is it hunting and eating the evil things? You know, and still at that point it can be still hard to identify because there's so many different aspects that go into it. Personally, if you ask my greatest opinion, if you ask me, I don't believe in the Wendigo version of things. I do believe that there's technically the ability to lose your sanity and start murdering innocent victims, but isn't that kind of with anything? It happens with regular humans on a daily basis. I see it in the news every day. So, you know, I don't believe the Wendigo side of things where that you're basically cursed and you're forced and you're bound to fail and you're bound to eventually always fail and always choose wrong, no matter what you do. You know, if you hunt at all, you choose wrong eventually. You know, it's just, and there are even some spins on it that say that even if you, like I said, even if you're hunting evil things, you're already cursed. The moment that your teeth tear into the skin of an evil thing is the moment you're cursed, not when it tears into something innocent, but when it tears into something evil. You're already cursed. So it's like, I don't believe in all that, you know. I don't believe in it just doesn't make any sense. It just doesn't make it. It seems like it's based off of more like fear, like to scare children into doing the right thing. That's what Wendigo seems like to me. Wendigo seems like scaring children into doing the right thing. Rjdyosn seems like, okay, I'm going to wear it on my sleeve, here it is. So, you decide which one that you want to latch on to, or if you want to latch on to something in between. But that is Wendigo versus